What are the most common errors that people make when putting together a grant application? Well, in this video, I'm going to go through the three most common critical errors that I have made, that other grant seekers have made, and that I have seen grant seekers make in applications. I'm Benjamin Dean from grantgating.com. I hope you enjoy this video and others like it on this channel that are aimed at helping you get more grants. Be sure to check out the link in the description for 7 more than the 3 I'm going to cover here in terms of critical errors. Number 1, failing to follow the funder's guidelines. Now, this might seem obvious, but it is not. There are typically on medium to larger size grants hundreds of micro requirements throughout the application that you will need to take note of. This is the first and most common mistake that people make. Every grant has specific requirements and instructions, and some of them are layered. Many of them are layered within one application question or another. So the things that you want to look at are things like the funder's website. Sometimes I have seen in the grant application, there be no mention of a particular requirement, but on the website, or on the RFP, or on some other material, FAQ page, there is something else that's in there. Sometimes this is simply user error by the funding organization, not putting it directly in the application. Other times, I imagine that it is to check to see if the research is actually being done. But other things you're going to look at are the required deliverables, the supporting documentation, or the uploads, the documents that you'll need to prepare ahead of time to put into this application. One of the things that I see is that many of these documents require a whole other set of processes to create them, whether they're financial, organizational, program related, such as a logic model, things that take time to prepare. That's not so easy just to drop a file in. Another one is word counts and formatting restrictions. This is one that will cause headaches for sure, and can really reroute your writing process if you're not taking these at least into some consideration as you're sitting down to put sections together. One that I'll tell a quick story on is the funding limits or the funding range. In the process that I have for writing grants, I'm writing or preparing or researching multiple grants at the same time, many times for the same program. There's a lot of duplication in terms of questions. There's a lot of, copy and paste in terms of the boilerplate language that you're using in some of the grants, and you can get into a sort of autopilot mode. And one thing that I did, put together an amazing grant application, two at the same time, basically for the same program, and I swapped the funding request amount on both, meaning that on one, what I ended up doing was putting $5,000 less than I intended to, and that my budget and budget justification showed, and the other $5,000 more. The one that I put less in, I was fully funded, and that was good news, although I probably left some money on the table there. The one that I put the incorrect amount on, in terms of $5,000 more, I was disqualified because it was over the range that they funded for that particular grant. I will never do that again. But taking the time right at the onset to review and even separately documenting some of the more unusual requirements in a particular grant application so that you have that in mind and can refer back to is critically important. This is the number one reason that a really good grant application doesn't get funded. Okay, so not adhering to these, worst case scenario is you're disqualified. Best case scenario is you've just created a headache for yourself. That's number one. Number two is lack of clarity and focus. This is another common error in submitting a proposal when it just doesn't have the focus that is needed. So again, you are thinking about who is actually reading this grant application, not just generally an organization. organizations don't review grant applications, people do. So who is that person, or who are those people? Is it a staff member? Is it multiple staff members that do a pre-review? Then is it kicked over to a grant review board or a committee? Is it kicked to their board of directors? What is that process? Understanding that can be critically helpful to you in how you put this proposal together. But regardless of what it is, it's essential to clearly articulate your project's goals, your objectives, and your expected outcomes. Okay, those sections are going to be referred to maybe not first, but they are ones where if you do not have cohesion in your narratives with those outcomes, goals, objectives, then you're going to get tossed, or you're going to be docked if there's any sort of yellow flag, red flag where these are not matching what the narrative and program proposal and explanation of services are. It's not going to make sense to the funder. So in addition to this, you want to avoid using jargon or technical language that might confuse the reviewer. Focus on delivering very concise and to some degree compelling narratives that highlights the importance and impact of your project. So using clear headers, using bullet points where possible, using visuals if there's the opportunity to reference a supporting document that will more clearly articulate a point that you're attempting to make within the narrative. That's great. Then uploading a separate visual, such as a graph, a table, a chart, some sort of supporting documentation, if it is allowed. Okay, so visuals can make things really, really clear. All right, so lack of clarity and focus. The only other point here I would make is just, again, thinking about who is reading it and what they have on their plate. This is important to consider when you're thinking both about a national, a federal, a state, a larger organization, or an organization that's going to be fielding larger amounts of applications versus something local where you have information that says, hey, there's not going to be that many applications. You think that the reviewer is going to spend a little bit more time going through this. Okay, so you can be more verbose, typically, generally speaking, when you're looking at local, smaller amounts of funding, and you're going to need to be in your technical writing mode for sure, making sure every single point that you want to get across or you need to get across is done so in direct language. Okay, there's a lot of skimming. Skimming brings us to number 3, say skipping and skimming. The number 3 common mistake is an inadequate budget justification. I know from being on these committees and talking with people and getting feedback over the years around how grant applications are reviewed, generally speaking, is many will go to the budget justification first. A well-prepared budget is crucial for the grant proposal. It has to sync up, of course, with what it is that is eligible in terms of the actual line items on the budget, what's an eligible expense and what's not, but it should also take into consideration what is preferred, what type of funding is preferred by that funder in terms of what are they going to cover, what do they want to cover, are they capacity building, or are they program costs? Do they like staff costs? Do they not like staff costs? Is there an indirect cost percentage that is suggested, or is there not? Are you going to put that overhead, that program, indirect program management and organizational costs, are you going to put that in there or not? Regardless of what you put in there, the point here is the actual budget justification. Okay, most grant applications are going to have these sections, the budget and the budget justification, next to each other. Sometimes that form will be stock for you in terms of the budget. If there's not a stock form, many times what I will do is I will include another column in my budget. If it's say an Excel document or a spreadsheet upload that allows me to do that, and I will summarize the key reason for that cost item being in this budget, a mini budget justification. And again, thinking about who's going to read it, how they're going to read it. Many times they'll pop open the budget and look at the budget justification at the same time. So if I can pop in there a sort of quick hit, quick phrase, quick reference on each line item in a technical writing manner where everything's formatted the same, it's going to be quick and easy and understandable for somebody who's reviewing to understand, okay, I'm justifying every cost. Then they might pop over to the longer narrative portion of the budget justification to see everywhere, everything. So you're going to avoid vague costs. You're going to avoid inflating costs. If you have any sort of concern, or even not even concern, but ignorance about, say, the appropriate amount of cost to allocate towards marketing a program, to getting the word out there, or towards, say, something like program evaluation, which is the number one most commonly forgotten item to put into a budget. That line item specifically is one that funders are going to want to see. But if you have any confusion about any of these items, do a little bit more research. Don't be afraid to actually ask the funder directly. Say, I'm putting together the budget here, and I'm curious if you have a range that you're typically looking for in terms of cost allocated for marketing or cost allocated for staffing or whatever the case is. And they're usually going to give you some degree of guidance on there, especially if you've done some of the legwork, you have some of the budget put together already. So I break down each expense category into the line items in as much detail as I can. I provide rationale for every cost. This level of detail demonstrates very thorough planning and an understanding of the financial resources required. If you can articulate to the funder via these sections that you understand the costs clearly, that will eliminate red and yellow flags that come up. It will also eliminate some of the follow-up questions that may come in the form of an email or come out in a interview. Okay. Inadequate budget justifications raise red flags and they diminish the proposal's credibility. They're something in the typical rubric where you're going to have one or two sections of points that are going to be allocated for that review. So it'll say something to the reviewer, the budget is accurate and comprehensive. The budget is appropriate for the program that is described. Those two things out of, say, 15, you might say, well, that's only two of the sections, 2 points, if you will, or sets of points. But again, thinking about how every section colors the rest of the sections. The budget justification can color the bias or the mindset as the reviewer reads or rereads the rest of their of your application. Okay, so these are 3 things to avoid. These are 3 things that if you do them, you will be, in a strong way, you're going to be setting yourself apart right away on the review. And by following these, presenting a clear and focused proposal, providing detailed justification for the budget, you can avoid these very simple, very easy to avoid mistakes. In the description, there is a link for 10 total common grant proposal mistakes to avoid. Check that out below. And so, as you're thinking about it, what challenges do you face when you're writing your grant proposals? Feel free to comment below on that. I pinned a comment down there, and let's discuss and see how we can overcome those together. So thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next video.